Labdien visiem! Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gita Rosenberga. I am Chief Librarian in the Library of the University of Latvia, and the other big part of my daily work is related to international project Open Air with National Open Access Desk in Latvia. Project Open Air mission is to support the open access and open data, openness of research, and by developing infrastructure, specialists network, and technical services. Our specialists are organizing different activities, for instance, presentations, workshops, conferences, and consultations. And today, here will be held a seminar, Open License, Creative Commons for Open Science, Business, and Society. Before I will ask our guest on the stage, I will give short information about open air and open science. Thank you. Labdien, vēlreiz visiem prezentāciju sniegšu latviešu valodā, lai dotu ieskatu, ko īsti dara Open Air projekts un nedaudz par Open Access un nedaudz par Open Science. Tas ir starptautisks projekts, Eiropas projekts, un tas ilgst jau kopš 2009. Gada, un tam ir vairākas fāzes. Šobrīd ir sākusies 4. fāze Open Air Advance. Projekta Open Air reģionālais pārstāvis ir Latvijas Universitāte. Tā pilda funkcijas atbalsts Latvijas pētniekiem, pētniecības projektu vadītājiem, zinātnes politikas veidotājiem, izdevējiem, bibliotēku speciālistiem. Atvērtās piekļuves idejas skaidrošanas sabiedrībai ir vēl viens galvenais uzdevums, un informācijas sniegšana interesantiem un zinātniskās sabiedrības pārstāvjiem arī ārpus Latvijas. Un tā rezultātā ir izveidots Nacionālais atvērtās piekļuves dienests, kurš veic šīs funkcijas Latvijā. Un visi ir aicināti nākt, vērsties pie mums un jautāt, ja ir kādi jautājumi. Projekta pamata bāsti ir cilvēku resursi, infrastruktūra un politika. Cilvēku resursi, tas izpauž tā, ka ir kopā vairāk nekā 50 dalībnieki no dažādām Eiropas valstīm. Projekta mērķu realizēšanā sadarbojas profesionāļi no zinātniskām bibliotēkām un atvērtās pētniecības organizācijām, nacionālo e-infrastruktūru un datu eksperti, informācijas tehnoloģiju speciālisti un juristi. Projekta ietvaros katrā dalību valstī ir izveidots šāds dienests, National Open Access Desk, kas arī organizē dažādas aktivitātes, sniedz konsultācijas, atvērtās piekļuves un atvērtās zinātnes jautājumos. Infrastruktūra, tā sniedz atbalstu un dažādus pakalpojumus pētniekiem, projektu vadītājiem, finansētājiem. Infrastruktūra palīdz pārvaldīt publikācijas un citu zinātniskos rezultātus, izmantojot repozitoriju tīklu, kas ir savienots. Tā ir sistēma, kur savā starpā savienot informāciju par projektiem, par publikācijām, datu kopām, autoriem, datu sniedzējiem un organizācijām. Vēl viens stūrakmens, kas palīdz virzīt šo ideju, ir politika, un Open Air pārstāvji arī skaidro sabiedrībai un valsts ierēģiem atvērtās zinātnes pozitīvo ietekmi un zinātnes attīstību, veicina Eiropas komisijas politisko nostādņu izpratni, īstenošanu, kā arī atvērto piekļuvi, veicinošu dokumentu pieņemšanu institūciju un valsts līmenī. tā vispārīgi runājot, misija ir atbalstīt atvērto piekļuvu zinātniskām publikācijām, atvieglot un uzlabot informācijas apriti, zināšanu, nodošanu Eiropas pētniecības telpā un arī ārpus tās. Veicināt atvērtību un dalīšanos ar zināšanām. Kur ir tas pats sākums šīs idejas rašanās? Pirmkārt, jau jebkuram cilvēkam tomēr ir vēlme dalīties. Tā ir tā dabiska vēlme dalīties ar savām zināšanām, ar saviem atklājumiem. Un jebkurš pētnieks tomēr grib, lai uzzina par to, ko viņš ir izpētījis. Un dalīties ar sabiedrību, un tālāk sabiedrību var attīstīt uzņēmējdarbību, ekonomiku un tā tālāk. Otrs ir vienkārši tā ir nepieciešamība, ir nepieciešams tērēt resursus ekonomiski, tāpēc ir izdevīgi dalīties un kopā radīt kaut ko. Un arī mūsdienu informācijas un komunikācija tehnoloģijas tās, kas paver mums arvien jaunas iespējas dalīties, apmainīties ar informāciju un attīstīt dažādus pakalpojumus. Īsumā ieskicēšu, kas tad ir atvērtā piekļuve. Atvērtās piekļuves kustība ir globāls process, kas notiek visā pasaulē. Atvērtās piekļuves kustības pamatā ir ideja veicināt tūlītēji brīvu pieeju pētnieciskai un izglītojošai informācijai, īpaši, ja tā ir tapusi par sabiedrības līdzekļiem. Pieeja jābūt bez šķēršļiem, bez finanšu, bez tiesiskiem, tehniskiem šķēršļiem, un tās ir arī tiesības informāciju nodot tālāk, dalīties, pārveidot, protams, norādot arī autoru. Šajā slaidā mēs varam redzēt vienu no, teiksim tā, risinājumiem, ko Eiropas komisijas pētniecības un inovāciju ģenerāldirektors ir izstrādājis, šādu schēmu, kurā mēs varam redzēt šos ceļus, kā tiek pieņemts lēmums un tālāk attiecīgi par izplatīšanu un kā šo informāciju tālāk nodot, teiksim, zelta ceļš un zaļais ceļš. Zelta ceļš tas ir publicēšanās atvērtās piekļuves žurnālos. Zaļais ceļš ir repozitorija, kas ikvienam pētniekam, autoram ir iespēja tur ielikt, deponēt savu darbu. Un tas attiecas gan uz publikācijām, gan uz datiem. Atvērtā zinātne, tas jau ir vēl plašāks jēdziens. Jaunākie attīstības centieni tiek vērsti tieši uz tās veidošanu un attīstīšanu. Un galvenais mērķis ir atvērtās piekļuves idejas veicināšana. Par jēdzienu atvērtā zinātne vēl notiek diskusijas, tiek piedāvāt dažādi varianti. Šis ir viens no visaptvarošākajiem. Atvērtā zinātne sastāv no dažādām komponentēm, kas arī ir vēl tikai veidojās. Šeit ir viens no variantiem, kur ir iet runa par atvērtās laboratorijas piezīmēm, par pētniecības datiem, par atvērto piekļuvu publikācijām, atvērto zinātnisko publikāciju recenzēšana, pētnieku sociālie tīkli, kur notiek dalīšanās, un atvērtās izglītības materiāli un citas komponentes. Eiropas komisija attīsta Eiropas atvērtā zinātnes mākoni, kas miljoniem pētnieku un miljoniem zinātnes tehnoloģiju jomas profesionāļu Eiropā būs vērtīgs risinājums datu glabāšanai, kopīgošanai un atkal izmantošanai. Eiropas atvērtā zinātnes mākoņa ideja ir izveidojusies pateicoties Eiropas mākoņu datošanas iniciatīvai, kur ir saistīta ar digitālā vienotā tirgus izveidi Eiropā. Šeit ir citāts no Eiropas komisijas pētniecības zinātnes un inovāciju komisāra Karluša Modeša, un viņš uzsver, ka ieguvumi, ko brīvi pieejamie dati sniegs Eiropas zinātnei, ekonomikai, sabiedrībai būs milzīgi. Vēl nedaudz par to, ko tad dod, un kāpēc Eiropas komisija atbalsta šo ideju. Tā dod pātrinājumu pētniecībai, ka rezultātā palielinās rūpnieciskās izpētes un attīstības investīciju peļņa, novērš pētījumu dublēšanos, īpaši tas attiec uz pētījumiem, kas ir ar negatīviem rezultātiem, veicina sadarbību pētniecībā, veicina rezultātu izmantošanu uzņēmējdarbībā. Un, attiecīgi, vērojam lielāka valsts ieguldīto līdzekļu atdeve sabiedrībai. Šeit ir slaids par Nacionālo atvērtās piekļuves dienestu, kas tātad OpenAid projekta rezultātā, kurš ir šo visu ideju rezultātā tapis, ir izveidot arī mājaslapa, kurā mēs esam apkopojuši informāciju, var iepazīties ar pašu projektu, ar atvērtās piekļuves kustības aizsākšanos un turpināšanos. Tāpat mēs esam izveidojuši sadaļu atvērtā zinātne, kur ir arī pieejams e-kurs, kuru mēs uzturam, un tas ir brīvi pieejams jebkuram cilvēkam. Un jaunākais, ko mēs esam uztaisījuši, ir Creative Commons sadaļa. Mājaslapas kreisajā pusē būs izvēle, kur arī laipni aicinam iepazīties ar informāciju, kas ir tur. Jā. Laipni aicinu, jā, izmantot mūsu pakalpojumus. Paldies, vai ir kādi jautājumi? Kurs jau ir šobrīd pieejams. Viņš jau ir pieejams, jā. Jebkuram cilvēkam, kurš var pieslēgties. Tā, jā, izslēdz. Okay, so now I invite our guest on the stage. Gwen Frank, it is yours, and I will ask you to introduce yourself. It will be better. Thank you.
Perfect. I will put my timer on because I warned Gita beforehand that I tend to go overtime, so I will make sure that after 45 minutes there's a break. Okay. This is okay for everybody? Okay, good. Before I start, it's a bit difficult for me to know who you are. Just as a little background, who of you is working in the library or as a librarian? Okay. Any researchers? Perfect. What are the others doing?
Research administration.
Research administration. Other in research administration? Okay. Yeah. Perfect. It's just to have a background that I know that I have a bit of different kinds of backgrounds. I know I'm going to give this presentation in English because I don't speak Latvian, unfortunately. But I do realize that it's not your mother tongue, nor is it mine. So if something is not clear, if I'm not, please just raise your hand and just ask me to repeat, or the same if something is what I'm saying is not clear, or if you have any questions, you can just interrupt me. I think that's better than having like a Q&A at the end. To just feel free to raise your hand, and then we can start. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be talking a bit about Creative Commons licenses. I mean, we've put there Creative Commons licenses. I will warn you up front that most of the things that I'll be saying about Creative Commons license are also applicable for other open licenses. So I mean, I used to be working for Creative Commons International, and now I'm the lead of Creative Commons Belgium. So obviously that's the license I know most about, but the principles are quite similar for other open licenses. And then I think we can have a small break afterwards, and then after this break we will talk about open business models and how open licenses can actually help you open up your workflow. Again, a little warning. If I say business, don't think immediately that I'm thinking about like a big commercial company. I'm just talking about how your relationship with your clients or your customers or your students or your researchers, you have certain workflows in place, and I will investigate together with you how you can open it up a bit more if it's relevant for you. So here we go. So first part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what are open licenses, why it's important, how do they work? How can you license your own work? How can you find openly licensed work? And how can you cite them correctly, which is a very important part of Creative Commons licenses. And also I'm going to be giving a couple of things that you have to keep in mind. Let me call it like common misunderstandings or some stuff that people get wrong or have like wrong ideas about in general. So, who of you is familiar with? I'm sorry, I'm also a bit interactive, so I'm going to ask you. Don't be shy. Like, you know, we're a small group, so you can speak up. How many of you are familiar with the Creative Commons licenses? Okay, good. I'm going to show this to start. Shall I just switch over there? I was operated on my voice 3 weeks ago, and so I took the opportunity of having a bit of YouTube clips for instead of me talking.
Have you ever wondered how to download and share digital content legally? How do you let people know that you want them to reuse your own work? Creative Commons licenses can help you do both. We'll show you how. Our world's exploded with digital opportunities. Now we can communicate, share, and work together using the exceptional distribution network that is the internet. Information and content can fly between us in exciting new ways. But it's important to know that when something is created, say a photo, a document, or a music track, it's automatically protected by copyright. Copyright enables people to say who can share and reuse their creations. You must always obtain someone's permission before sharing or reusing their work, even when it's posted online. But what if a creator wants everyone to use their work, without the hassle of granting permission over and over? This is where Creative Commons can help. Creative Commons provides licensing tools that are free to use. You can apply a license to your work, which refines your copyright and streamlines how you give permission. Zach here downloads a photo called CC Kiwi that he wants to use in his science project. He can do this without asking Kiri, the photographer, first, because she's already given permission with a Creative Commons license. Kiri's license is legally robust, but easy for Zach to understand. She's told the world, including Zach, that they can use CC Kiwi as long as they acknowledge her as the original photographer. There are more rules Kiri could have included. Creative Commons licenses are made up of license elements. You can think of them as rules, and each have their own special symbol. This is attribution. It means that Zach must acknowledge Kiri when he publishes his science project containing her photo. This is non-commercial. It means no one else but Kiri is permitted to make money from CC Kiwi. Tim wants to print the photo onto t-shirts and distribute them to friends. He can do this, but he must not sell them. This is no derivatives, and it means that Kiri hasn't given permission to change her photo. Kate can use CC Kiwi on her design blog, but will need to ask Kiri before retouching or mixing up the image. And this is share alike. It means new creations that use CC Kiwi need to carry the same license. Jack incorporates his own remix of CC Kiwi in his video installation, but he must share the work under the same terms that Kiri has. Each Creative Commons license gives permission to share and includes the attribution rule. So people who find your Creative Commons licensed work are automatically allowed to share it, but are required to acknowledge you if they do. The other 3 license elements are optional, and you can choose which ones to add, if any. Here are the 6 combinations that make up Creative Commons licenses. The difference between them is how many rules apply when someone wishes to use your work. The attribution license allows reusers the most freedom, and the attribution non-commercial no derivatives license allows the least freedom. The attribution license and the attribution share alike licenses are sometimes referred to as free cultural works approved licenses. These 3 licenses restrict commercial use of a work. And these 2 licenses do not give permission for adapting or remixing. These two licenses require new works to be licensed under the same terms. To choose and apply one of these licenses, and to view their terms in more detail, visit us at creativecommons.org.nz. Or you can answer some questions to help you decide which license best suits your needs at creativecommons.org/choose. There are some good ways to find other people's Creative Commons licensed work online. You can use a search filter by going to the Creative Commons website. Or why not try the Jamendo website for music, Flickr for images, or Digital NZ for New Zealand content. Using Creative Commons licenses could help your creations reach more people. Maybe you want to connect with others across the globe and take turns at improving a report. Or maybe you just want to have fun, remixing someone else's work. Whatever reason you have to share your work, you'll find there are scientists, educators, companies, and public agencies who are using Creative Commons. By opening up permission, just imagine how much we can achieve. Collaborating on what we hold in common, being open about big decisions, and finding solutions in the spaces between us. Let's work together, confidently and legally.
I don't know if the glass of wine is actually part of the video, I just realized. So it's a clip from New Zealand. It's already a couple of years old, but I always show it because I think it very nicely summarizes what Creative Commons is. Oh. Can we maximize it again? Yeah, thank you. So basically, I mean, if you were to summarize Creative Commons with one sentence, it would be some rights reserved as a middle ground between the copyright, which is all rights reserved, which means that if you want to do something with a copyright protected work, you have to ask permission to the creator or the rights holder. And the entire other side of the spectrum, you have the public domain, which is everything that does not have any copyright restrictions on it, either because the material was not copyrighted in the first place, or because the copyright term has passed. Because I don't know, is it in Latvia also 70 years after the death of the author? Yes. Yes? Okay. So Creative Commons is actually something in the middle. Like, Creative Commons is not something, it's not an alternative for copyright. You know, like Creative Commons license actually is a simplification of existing copyrights, and a simplification is the simplification part is the fact that you don't have to ask permission for every reuse or every modification you want to make, because the creator or the rights holder has indicated in advance what you as a user can and cannot do with the material. So it's intended to simplify existing copyright rules, and I'll go into it, why that's necessary in the next slides. So what's wrong with traditional copyright? Like, why would you need this simplification? Without knowing very much like the details of the situation in Latvia, I don't know if there's any copyright expert in the room who can chip in. No. Okay. So what I want to, I'm pointing out a couple of things that are globally that are an issue with copyright. The main one is actually that there are no uniform rules. The copyright rules in Latvia are different from the ones in Belgium, different from the ones in Germany, are entirely different from the ones in the United States. I mean, that was not really a problem like 50 years ago, because, you know, what are the odds that you actually would want to reuse something that has been created in the United States? With the internet, of course, I hope you can see that is a very big issue. One of the main things, for example, that is different is this copyright protection term. I know in Belgium it's 70 years, in Latvia apparently it is as well, and I think in Mexico it's 100 years. In the United States there's a tendency to prolong it, because there's a very powerful lobby machine active to you know, because some people want to avoid certain very well-known images and products to become part of the public domain. So this is a very big issue, and the fact that it's different in every country does not make it very easy as a user to determine whether you can reuse a work without asking permission. It gets, I mean, this might sound trivial, you know, like works like Shakespeare or Jane Austen, you know, like everybody, it's very clear that these are in the public domain because you know that, you know, like they're dead more than 70 years ago. But it becomes very difficult, especially with materials that have been made between 1900 and 1950, or also with materials that you are not really sure who is the rights holder. So this is kind of complicated. I'm not going to go into that. We're going to distribute the slides, right? Afterwards, yeah. So I've got some links behind this about net neutrality, about digital rights management, which is basically how you can, as a rights holder, can limit the reuse of your work through technical measures. For example, making sure that a DVD is not cannot be played in other countries than your own, and things like that. So yeah, the stat isn't clear. That's the one that I talked about before. There are plenty of other stuff. Patent trolling, which is a very U.S.-centered issue, but it's sometimes it flows over into to the continent, to Europe. Basically, this is what I want to say. So, because of the internet, it's become very easy to make your work openly available online and to provide access to it and to get access to other people's works. Maybe I should have put there between brackets legally or illegally, because you know it's both have become a lot easier. And it also has become much easier, unfortunately, for third parties to prevent this access, either on purpose or accidentally. And that basically means that there's a lot of content out there that, you know, if you're lucky, you know that it exists. It's only one click away, but you're not sure whether you can legally access it or if you can do something with it. If you're working regularly with researchers, this is quite a common issue when you're talking about open science, right? Like, it's very difficult to know who has written what, and then if it's behind a paywall, it's you know it's there, but you cannot access it unless you pay for it. So this is an issue, and it's an issue both from the user side, because you want to do something with the material, but it's also an issue from the creator or the rights holder side, because sometimes you can lock access accidentally, because you're not aware of how you can open up your materials. So open licenses are actually a fix. That's how we call it. That's how we used to call it at Creative Commons. So it's not like, in an ideal world, copyright in general would be perfect. Of course, that doesn't exist, but would be much more suited to the needs of researchers, of librarians, of teachers, of the civil society. They would not have to be afraid of having to, of reusing something and to commit a copyright infringement until that. Because there is a copyright reform debate going on, but it's not going in the right way. An open Creative Commons or an open license in general is a very good way to make sure that at least your own work is visible and accessible, and preferably also reusable. So if you're the rights holder, on purpose I don't say creator, because you can also be a rights holder of something without being the actual, without being the creator, of course. If you apply an open license, so you can make clear from the start what can and cannot be done with the work, you remove legal uncertainty for the reuser, and this is also important. You actually remove the necessity to arrange permissions on an individual basis. So that means that if you use a CC license and somebody wants to reuse your work, they don't have to contact you to ask you whether they can reuse the work, because you've put it in the license text. The only reason why they would contact you is if they want to do something else than what is permitted in the license text. This sounds trivial again. I mean, I can imagine that you don't have that much stuff and that people don't contact you on a daily basis whether they can use your materials, but you have photographers, for example, who have thousands of pictures on Flickr or wherever, and then it might become a hassle, and then having like a blanket license for all your work, a Creative Commons license, actually removes a lot of that burden. And also important is that having a license is actually, just as, of course, traditional copyright also protects you against infringements. But because a license text, a Creative Commons license, is so clear and obvious, like it's easy to read, it actually also protects you against any infringements. If the license text said this, it's not allowed to have commercial reuse, sometimes it's easier for people to understand if they have it written out in simple terms than if they have to think about, like, okay, this is protected under copyright, what am I allowed to do, what am I not allowed to do. So if you make it clear what can be done from the start, access, attribution, reuse, modification, commercial use, others can build upon your work. Basically what I've been saying now is a summary of the clip, right? So are there any questions about this? All clear? Okay. This I just want to mention, again, I know this seminar has been announced as Creative Commons. My expertise lies with Creative Commons, but I just want to point out some other licenses, just so you know that they exist. I'm not an expert on them, it's not something, if you ask me any questions about that, I will have to refer you to somebody else, but just so you know that these exist. And even more importantly, the second and the third point over there is that not every license is suitable for every content type. Creative Commons and Creative Commons and Creative Commons Zero, which I will go into in detail, are very suitable for text and images. They're not suitable at all for software, for example. For open source software, you would typically would use a GNU license. For databases, apart from CC and from some CC licenses, there's also an open database license that can be used. There's even a license for open hardware developed by CERN. Again, I'm not going to go into that detail, but just that you're aware of that. My first point, I want to stress that again. I don't think it's applicable here for you, but people love to create new licenses. Especially government people. Any government people in the room? No. People love to create new licenses. Like, they think like, oh, Creative Commons is such a good idea, we're going to make it, we're going to make the Latvian public license, which does basically the same as Creative Commons license, or, but they're going to tweak it a little bit, and making it perfectly impossible to combine that license with any other materials, because you have to. Creative Commons has, or these licenses have the benefit of being very clear and being very globally applicable. So somebody in Gambia will be able to understand what says what is meant by the terms in a Creative Commons license. They will not be able to understand what is in the Latvian public open government license, database license. I'm just making this up. So this is something that we always warn against, like try not to, if you ever talk to people who are in policy or who work with this, like try to discourage people from creating their own dedicated copyright license, and just say, like, look what's out there. I mean, I mentioned a couple of them here. There are quite a lot of different types of licenses that can be very much. I mean, I have some difficulties imagining other uses or reuses that are not covered by one of these licenses I mentioned here. So, how do they work, CC licenses? This is again a bit the summary of what I've been saying before. I'm repeating myself a lot, I notice. I'm sorry about that. So, like the guy in the video explained, there are 4 basic building blocks. So, and these can be combined into 6 licenses and 2 public domain dedications. Behind the license, there's a 3-layered structure. I'm not going to go into detail, but it's useful for you to know that this exists. There's a machine-readable aspect of a license. There's a human-readable aspect of a license, and there's a legal code. The legal code is the most daunting element of this. This is really the long text, which it's been written by lawyers. It's universally applicable. And there used to be, up until Creative Commons is now in its 4th version. Up until the 3rd version, these licenses were actually tailor-made for every country. So every country had some lawyers working on that, so that it was very specifically like tailored to the local legal situation. With Creative Commons 4.0, this has become a global. The text has become global. It's still it can be translated. So we just talked earlier that maybe there's not a Latvian translation yet, but it should be there. Because Creative Commons works with volunteer teams who do this, so it's not like people get paid to do this. So you have to have somebody local in the country or who knows the language well, who's willing to do that. So this is the juridical text. So if you feel that the conditions of the license you've applied are being infringed and you have to go to court, for example, this would be the text that you use. Because nobody's going to read this, of course, unless unless you have a very specific question or a very specific interest in this. So there's also this very nice human readable version, which is if you, for example, if you license your work, this would be what you link to. Like people can see in one click and like in one, like on one web page, what you can and cannot do. Oh, this also exists in all different kinds of different languages. This is. I mean, basically, this says everything that you need to know as a non-legal person. And then, of course, there's a machine-readable version, and this is just what is being used by Google Search and by Flickr and by Wikimedia, and like all the web platforms that allow you to filter on Creative Commons licenses and things like that. Like they need to be able to crawl images or works on a Creative Commons license. So this is basically, you don't really need to concern yourself with this. I just mentioned here so that you know that these 3 layers exist. This is how it looks like in summary. So the major element is the by or the attribution one. So this is actually a part of all 6 licenses. You cannot have a Creative Commons license without by or attribution. This actually, if you have CC BY, that means that you can do everything with it as long as you attribute correctly. And what maybe I can mention here as well is that it's not because you license it under Creative Commons license that you, for example, you use your moral rights, or that this does not supersede normal copyright rules. Like there are some, as a copyright holder, you have certain moral rights on your work that is not necessarily covered by copyright. And I'm not sure if I make myself clear, if you understand what I'm saying, but you can always protest, for example, against a misrepresentation of your work. Like, for example, if you would have your work abused if you have a picture and it's abused by a political party that you don't agree with, and there might be some other legal causes that you can protest against, and it's not based on copyright. And it does not mean because you apply Creative Commons right, it doesn't mean that all those other rights are just like down the trash. Creative Commons is not exclusive. Like there are other rights that still exist. Share alike. This is what the guy said very well in the clip. So this is basically the copyleft license for those of you who are familiar with open source principles, which means that the adaptation, the remix, whatever has been done by the work, the new license needs to be as under the same conditions. So you cannot add any additional conditions on when something is licensed as CC by share alike. For example, my entire presentation is licensed CC by share alike. That means that if you want to do something with this, if you want to take some certain slides out of it and you want to reuse it, you cannot impose a non-commercial clause on top of it, because I have said that I want to share alike. I want it to be shared on the same conditions as the original one. So this basically, like I said, is an open source principle. This basically allows always for the original work to not be locked behind copyright or behind a paywall. So non-commercial. Maybe a little extra explanation there, because are you familiar with like the general discussions going on in open science? No. So there is a bit of a discussion about, because lots of people, not only in open science actually, in lots of places, people think, when they think about commercial reuse, they think about big bad banks and oil companies abusing your work. I don't know what you would imagine to happen, but I know that's like the thing that people have in their minds, that, you know, if I make my work available for commercial reuse, Shell will put the picture on their I don't know, their oil drill things or something. What a lot of people forget is that a lot of things are actually commercial, and that you don't realize. WordPress.com, for example, or many websites are actually all web platforms that work with advertising are in principle commercial platforms. If you're licensed at CC BY NC, you actually restrict reuse on those platforms. That is, for example, the reason why Wikipedia and Wikimedia, they don't accept materials that are that have a non-commercial clause on it, because they want to remove the doubt. So I know that's what I just want to say, like especially in science, but also in other fields, there's this sort of like instinctively reflex to apply to add this non-commercial license, you know, just to be sure that the big bad wolves are not going to reuse your stuff. But don't forget that a lot of commercial actors are actually, you know, like might be making good use of your work. And also, I'm also thinking about, for example, small and medium-sized companies or newspapers or blogs. You know, so don't be too trigger happy with the non-commercial clause. That's what I always say. And the no derivatives is this means that you cannot actually change it. So if it's a color picture, you cannot turn it into black and white. Well, you can, but you cannot distribute the result. You cannot crop the picture. You cannot translate the text. You can for your own use, but you cannot distribute. So these combine into 6 licenses. Again, these are all clickable. So, and if you go to the presentation, and you can just click through to the Creative Commons side. So I hope you'll sort of see this difference between the 2 upper licenses, CC BY Share Alike, which allow lots of different forms of reuse, and then, you know, like the lower ones, NC, non-commercial, no derivatives, especially. These are rather restrictive. You know, I'm not going to say they're exactly the same as traditional copyright, because you still have the advantages of the fact that the license text is there, but as far as reuse and remix go, there's not too much difference between traditional copyright and this NC and D clause, because basically you cannot do anything with the material except few. On top of these 6 licenses, Creative Commons also has 2 public domain tools. They're not called licenses. It's a mistake that people often make. They call it also licenses. It's not licenses. Whatever, nobody's dying if you call them licenses, but they're not. So if a work is in the public domain and there's no known copyrights, you can apply a public domain dedication to it. And then perhaps a bit more interesting is the CC0 one, which is actually an active, I would say, a donation to the public domain. So if you want to say, like, okay, I don't want to have any rights on whatever I created, you can add the CC0 to it. This is also something that is used often in cases of, because I mentioned before, the lack of uniformity. This is also something that you can add to remove doubt. For example, a database. I'm not going to talk about database rights, don't worry. But database rights and copyright on databases is very different in different jurisdictions. In some jurisdictions, actually, a database is protected by copyright, just because it's you know, like it's a work, something. In other jurisdictions, it is not. because it's not original enough. If anybody's watching who's a copyright expert, I'm sorry, like it's not, I'm making a huge simplification. But you will soon understand that if, for example, you want to combine two databases, openly licensed databases, and it's easier to do so if both of the databases are, have a CC0 allocation, because then you know that there are no known rights on top of it, even if like there was nothing to copyright in the first place. But just like, you're sure. This is, for example, something that happens a lot with metadata. Because metadata for books or for pictures or whatever, in principle, metadata is not copyrightable because it's not an original, it's not an original work. But in some cases, it might be considered people might think that it's copyrightable because they have put a lot of work in it and it's, somebody has been entering this metadata for years and years and years. There's lots of budget going, so we want to put it in copyright. Basically, you cannot, and that's why a lot of universities and libraries and image public institutions actually put CC0 on their metadata, so that it's clear for everybody that everybody can do with it whatever you want. You can have it crawled, you can have it copied, you can do with it whatever you want. So this is again a bit of the order from most open to least open. This is basically repeating what I've said before. Just keep in mind, no derivatives and no commercial, that's what I've said before, that might have some consequences that you might not always intend. I was just, when I was on the plane, I was reading a very interesting article from somebody who was very pissed off by the abuse in her eyes, or in his eyes, I don't know, was made by their work in CC BY, and they were really complaining about, I've put everything on CC BY, and I feel that people are, they're not citing me properly. They're using pictures and quotes of my presentation, and they're just reusing it. And then they put in the end, somewhere in a corner, they put very small my name, and I don't want it anymore. I'm going to go CC BY and C and D. I'm going to go as strict as possible. And I mean, it's my personal opinion. I don't think if somebody wants to abuse your work, or somebody wants to not cite you or steal your work or cite you improperly, it doesn't really matter whether you use a very open license or a very closed license. So unless you really have some very sound reasons to not allow commercial use or not allow translations or the other derivatives, like for example, I can perfectly imagine that a photographer, I have many photographer friends, and if they use CC license, they will always use no derivatives because they don't want people to crop their picture. I think that's, for example, that's a legit reason to apply a very a restrictive license, or they want to, or even an NC, they say okay, I mean, I make my living from my pictures. I think that's quite a legit reason, but it does not. I mean, if somebody wants to abuse it, they will do it. Whether you have traditional copyright or whether you have an open license. Now a bit on a practical level. Adding a CC license to your work is actually very easy. You just go to the Creative Commons main site, you say add a license, and you go there and you enter the conditions, and it comes up with the correct logo, which is here. It comes up with some, I don't know if anybody still does that, paste code in your text. Most platforms now have the opportunity of just selecting it. You can actually also make it very easy, create a citation by just filling in the fields that you want to. So it's all very, very straightforward. The reason why I'm saying that, I'm going to stress this citation bit quite a lot because it's important. You can assume the goodwill of people, but the easier you make it for people to cite you correctly, the more likely it is that they will do it. I don't have any scientific support for this, but that's what I assume at least. So here are some examples of maybe a little bit longer citations than you would instinctively do, but at least they have the benefit of being very clear. This is very clear. It permits unrestricted use, distribution, reproduction in any medium provided the original author and source are credited. Here, if any relevant data is submitted to repositories, the policy should not be more restrictive than CC BY. Yeah. So this is very quickly, just to repeat that also a little common sense goes a long way. Attribution, like I said before, is obligatory. The original source, link to it if you use it. Mention if it's like a modification. Mention also the license you use, like, and preferably link to it, so that people, like they just if it's only click away with what they will need to do, it's more likely that they will concur with it. This is an example of like a citation which is pretty easy to comply with. So you have the title, you have the author, which is his Flickr username, and which is the source, and this is the license, and this is what it links to. Yeah. I'm not a saint on this. Like I sometimes just making like a presentation and you forget one, or you just do it wrongly, but this is how it should be done. This is not how it should be done. I mean, just for clarity, on my Instagram, I say that all my pictures are CC BY or CC, yeah. So if you use it, you quote like this. This is not a good attribution. This is not a good attribution. I mean, this is okay. It's not a good attribution. This is how it should be. And maybe even you should mention then, found on Instagram by Gwen Frank. Yeah. This is all of these. The reason why I mentioned this is like, for example, in Belgium we have a very well-meaning newspaper who make, they use quite a lot of images from Wikimedia Commons, which is like very laudable and like a very good practice, you'd think. Only they just put under every picture they use from Wikimedia, they put copyright Wikimedia Commons, which is not right, because like it's Wikimedia Commons is the platform where the picture is taken from, and if there's a copyright holder, it's the photographer, and so you can, even if you're like well-meaning, you can still like mess it up a little bit. Yeah, finding CC license content. There is, the guy in the clip mentioned the search function. They're reworking this, and I think it's gotten a lot better over the last couple of months. And yeah.
I just wanted to ask the previous slide, is it necessary to mention the version, like the CC BY 6.0?
Well, you might as well mention it, because it has changed a little. I mean, it has not changed that much, but because it's become, especially the 4.0 has become international, it might be, in any case, I assume you're linking to the correct version, but sometimes people might arrive otherwise. If you Google CC BY, I think the first thing that shows up is actually the 3.0, and so it's for clarity's sake, like it's better to do so, but it's not like anybody's going to come and sue you if you if you don't put it on there. So the openly licensed content, CC Search, yeah, they have incorporated quite a lot of big collections, as for example Wikimedia Commons, and I think also the collection from of course Europeana and the Metropolitan Museum in New York. They have quite a nice database of openly licensed works. An easy thing is, actually something that I did not know until quite recently is that also even on Google Images you can actually filter on creative, like openly licensed materials, and so it's not only Creative Commons, but you can check there. Lots of platforms such as Vimeo and YouTube also allow you to filter and only show openly licensed content, and of course then there's the what I would call the dedicated platforms that just work with with open licenses such as Wikimedia Commons, and of course TED, or TED clips, for example, are openly licensed. The Directory of Open Access Journals, SoundCloud, Flickr, they come and go, you know. It's just a little bit statistics. By now there's 1.4 billion Creative Commons licensed works. So you see there's quite a steep rise. I mean, if you want to know more about Creative Commons, this report, State of Creative Commons, is quite fun. You know, like it's a very interactive web page with all kinds of fun facts and statistics. Okay, so this is the part where I just give a little bit of warnings or advice. So, like I said earlier, an open license, it's a tool. It's not like a magical one that will solve all copyright infringements. I say here, like, it cannot fix bad science. If somebody does not attribute you properly, it's bad science. It's not the fault of the license. So you can make it easy to people to correctly attribute you, but it's not like the license is a magic trick that will prevent anybody ever everywhere in the world to abuse or to do something with your work that you don't like. But on top of that, I do want to mention that, of course, if you breach the conditions of a Creative Commons license, you're actually committing a copyright infringement. So if you are the rights holder and somebody is infringing on your work and you want to do it, you can go to court. And yeah, usually the licenses actually, they're tested, and there are not many court cases, but there are some. And they stand, you know, like they are legally robust is a correct language for that. So this just as a little bit of warning. Another thing that I want to mention is that don't forget that some reuses are allowed without a license. In Europe, for example, you have the system of limitations and exceptions, which means that quite a lot of forms of reuse, not all of them are allowed in every European Union member state, but you have a reuse for the, which is part of the Marrakesh Treaty for the translation into Braille for the blind. You have the reuse for educational purposes. You have a reuse for, help me, anybody knows more about limitation and exceptions? It's oh, that's me. It's, yeah. In the United States, you have the fair use, which is something similar. So, like for example, if I were to show here in my presentation a clip of copyright-protected film, I could argue that, you know, this is allowed. I don't have to ask permission to the creator of that film because this is an educational context. Is this clear? So that's, some reuses are actually allowed without you having to use copyright to allow this. So that also means that you cannot use a copyright. Do you want to say something? No. Okay. Sorry. Some reuses are just allowed even without the licenses. So there's also another good example is, for example, institutional repositories where you can archive research. A lot of institutional repositories, like for example in Belgium, they're allowed to share the research within their own institution and without asking, you know, like even if it's copyright protected, and that is the exception for research and development. So yeah, I mean it's you can add a license and you know, like it provides the benefit of the doubt, but it's not, if there's not a license, it doesn't mean that it's not permitted. And reversely, a Creative Commons license only is operative when the copyright is existing. So, for example, if it's not possible, to refer to my example before, if it's not possible to copyright a database, a Creative Commons CC BY license attached to a database does not have any juridical value. So. Okay, public domain works. This I'm going to go over very quickly. You can indicate it explicitly using CC0 or the CC public domain. You can assume it. This is all I talked about before, when the protection term is ended, when it was not copyrightable in the first place. You're not legally obligated to cite works in the public domain, but it's nice to do so in any case, especially if you're a scientist or researchers. And to repeat my argument that citing materials without proper attribution is simply bad science, regardless of the license or the copyright status of it. Here are some examples. I wanted to mention this because this was pointed out to me by a participant, and I was recently at a trainer camp organized by Foster Open Science, and somebody was talking about Ellen Euler from Creative Commons Germany, and she pointed me to this, which apparently there exists an English version from. And it's actually something that helps you attribute correctly. If you're really struggling with this attribution thing, you can go to this quite complicated address, and you get like a very nice attribution notice. And the reason why I use this one is because the image is actually in the public domain, but still, like you can be nice about it and state the author and what you've done with it. I've cropped it a little bit, and whether it's available under CC0. Some examples of stuff that's in the public domain. I'm not going to go into that at this point. Yeah, this is repeating what I've said in my one of the first slides, is that copyright can differ per jurisdiction. It's not something that we should, like you can build entire careers on researching these differences per jurisdiction. If you want to know more about the copyright reform debate, I would highly recommend going to Communia Association, who have very good materials about this exceptions and limitations and the copyright reform debate. Yeah, oh, I'm at the end. Quite in time, right? Yes. Are there any questions about Creative Commons licenses? Maybe, yeah.
For example, I assign license to my work. Can I later on change this license to more open, to more closed? And who controls this?
Well,
or for example, I reuse some work, and by sometimes this license is changed.
So, as a rights holder, you can do with the original work whatever you want. Because you're the rights holder. Like there's nobody you can ask permission to. But the only thing that you cannot change is that once you've put you put something on a license, you put a license on a work, and it's been published online, unless you really go manually look for every reuse and every modification and every copy that's ever been made, and like contract the people who used it and like take it offline, you cannot prevent the work under the original license to be out there. That doesn't stop you from, if you want to, like you have the picture, you've released it under CC BY, it doesn't stop you from releasing a new version under CC BY NC, but the original work under the original license will always remain available. It would create quite a legal uncertainty if you could just change the status. You can, of course, make the decision, like the person I talked about says, like, from now on, I will, before I use CC BY, from now on, I will use CC BY NC ND for everything. You can change the license on your website. You can say, like, okay, from now on, I switch, but that does not mean that if anybody has the original work from before, under the original license, that you cannot really prevent people from keep on using that. What would be could you give an example? Because I think you have something concrete in mind, right?
I'm publisher, for example, and if creators by some time can change their mind, but I already published with one license, and they change their mind.
You have something. It's called licensors' remorse. It's there is some literature on that, and again, like, I'm not a lawyer, so, like, please, I'm saying this in human language. There might be somebody watching or somebody, like, being able to give, like, more specific juridical advice on, like, how would you do that. But I think a basic rule to keep in mind is that, you know, once it's licensed under a certain condition, you can like make a new version of the work and license that under another condition, but the original will always be out there as long as there's a physical trace of it on the internet. Any other question? Okay. Shall we have like a 2-minute comfort break? Just like people stretch their legs, or do you want me to continue? Yeah, just have to. I was looking for the. I'm sorry. I was looking for the right term, and it's retraction, license retraction, and there is in the license text there is a paragraph about what if I change my mind, which will explain. But in general, it says that it's irrevocable. Okay, shall we start again? For the second part of my presentation, I have to make a confession. You are now officially my guinea pigs, because this is only the second time I give a presentation about this. So again, if something is not clear, please ask me. I'm going to ask you a little bit to think a little bit outside of the box. I know that sounds horribly like corporate, but you know what I mean. Because I call it open for business, but basically what I want to talk about is in your daily activities, in your daily workflow, regardless of whether if you're running a library or a research department, or if you're working for a research project, or if you run a publisher company, or if you are like me, a consultant or give trainings and workshops and things like that. What I want to do now is actually I want to investigate what does it mean to I put it there, what does it mean to put your work in the commons, but you could also frame it as what does it mean to make some or all parts of your workflow open. And I will do so, I will first discuss a little bit what does it mean and what are a bit the common misunderstandings and the advantages and disadvantages of it. And then I will give some examples, and then afterwards I would really, really like to briefly discuss it with you, because I want to hear what you think about this, what your thoughts about this. But before we start, the out-of-the-box part is the fact that I know you've all seen the word business. This does not necessarily mean a commercial company. It's not because you're not working at like if you're working in a library, for example, with a little bit of imagination, you can say that the researchers and students coming into your library are like customers is maybe not the right word, but they're your stakeholders, and you still have channels through which you communicate, and you have a value proposition, you have a product that you want to maybe not sell them, but at least that you have to present to them. So I want to take you to go a little bit with me on this road and use your imagination a little bit. Yeah, so this is a bit the finding and accessing and reuse your work using the full potential of the internet, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to show this. It's okay. I'm going to be short on time, but if you look at the presentation, it's a nice presentation on how open source principles, because we're a bit further than open access and open science. It's quite fun. This is what we discussed. What I discussed in the first part, right? So the difference between traditional copyright and openly licensed material, by which I mainly want to point out that especially this one is important, of course. So that traditional copyright just applies to everything you do if it's copyrightable, and with an open license you can change that. You can change that dynamic by identifying beforehand what can and cannot be done with your work. And the main aim, of course, of applying an open license is that you want to facilitate, I say here reuse, but facilitate access, facilitate the visibility of your work. The last time I gave this presentation was to the students' industrial design. I copied the slides because I thought they were quite interesting. But if you have a business, or if you have a company, or if you have a certain workflow in place, you create something, you want to access stuff by others, and you want to reuse materials. If you look at it at a creator level, going open means that you want to make your work and the metadata online available. You want to use open formats, preferably use open licenses, and another important element is that you want to be clear and unambiguous about what can and cannot be done with your work. I want to point out the last element is that you might also want to make use of, it's called, I put it here, the augmented version of your work. If you make it open, your work, somebody else might do something interesting with it, with what you can reuse again from your part. A very simple example, which is not commercial, is, for example, the Creative Commons license text, which is actually were translated by volunteers into 100 different languages all over the world, which actually benefits Creative Commons I mean, okay, it's organized partly by Creative Commons, but it's not, nobody pays for it or something. And it actually, Creative Commons makes use of the augmentation of the original work, namely, and benefits from it, the fact that it's translated in all these different languages. Okay, so when it's about access to materials, you want to properly cite stuff, and you want to respect the conditions. And if you make any remixes or augmentations or adaptations, you make them openly available. And this last thing is something I haven't mentioned before, is like looking for open source alternatives. I mentioned this. I know it's easier to said than done sometimes. You know, I also like to use Microsoft Office PowerPoint sometimes when I'm tired of using the open office or whatever variation, or sometimes I need to send something quickly through, and you use PDF, for example, which is like not a very open format. It's always, I mean, it's a nice principle to look as much as possible to open source alternatives for the tools and software and hardware that you already use, but it's, I mean, of course, you can only try, right? Yeah. This is, again, a repeat of what I said earlier. Want to put your attention to this one about the gray zone, which is what I talked about earlier, is that the stuff that might or might not be in the public domain. It can be complicated when you want to reuse stuff. It can be complicated to determine the status of that. So this refers back to what I said earlier. It's not because it's accessible that you're allowed to reuse it. Do you think you can come up, I've already given away the first one, do you think you come up with some arguments why you would not go open?
Well, I was just thinking that, you know, basically if you go open, then that means perhaps using money. I mean, how do you earn money?
How do you earn money? Yeah, that's a very very good point, which is something that I will. You have some counter arguments to that, but in principle, it's a very common argument that, you know, like, this is my business model. This is what I made my business from. Somebody else will steal my ID. That is also something that is very common, maybe even more common when it comes to patenting and things like that. But it's something that lots of people say, or an argument to remain behind a paywall. This refers to what the example I gave earlier about the photographer that doesn't want, only wants a no derivative clause and the open license because he does not want his pictures to be cropped or change the color, or people like tinkering with put like an Instagram filter on top of it or something. He doesn't want that, so he wants to be able to control the reuse of their work. This is a funny one. It's not safe. You might think like, okay, that's a bit weird. But you have two fun examples. One is a person who actually works in chemistry and is actually, you know, not making bombs, but making bombs, you know. And they say like, okay, I don't want this information to be freely available online. Then, you know, like, you can think like, if I really wanted to make a bomb, I might just pay the 40 euros to access to access the article or the data set, so it's, I mean, it's a bit of a dodgy argument, but some people say that. And this is also very common when it comes to hardware, like if you want to put stuff like physical things together, like, you know, I'm the one who knows how to do this, and it's not possible to replicate these instructions. To that, I'm going to say the following, that it's going open. It's not like an all or nothing situation. It does not mean that if you're interested in making parts of your workflow, parts of your business open, it does not mean you have to put everything out there in the public domain and that you cannot, you know, like, you just say, okay, I'm not going. I will give quite some examples later, and like lots of these companies and organizations I show, like they have part of their workflow open, or sometimes they have an open workflow, and then they decide later, like, okay, we're going to try to figure out how we can change that a little bit, or how we can restrict reuse, or we are only making some materials open and others remain closed. So it's not all or nothing. There are like quite a lot of shades of gray in there, and again, even if you talk about going open, you have so many variations within the licenses. So you can opt about commercial reuse, about modification, about copyleft. It's not because, going open does not necessarily mean that you use either the most open license or even the public domain. You can choose to have like a non-commercial license and still consider yourself open. You will always have some people saying, because open advocates can be quite like severe, strict, and they can say like, you're not being fully open. But sometimes it's important to acknowledge that it can be a first step. Like it can be a first step to say like, okay, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try this sort of very restrictive license, and then maybe if it goes well, or if I notice interest or something, like we can go to a more open license, for example. Yeah, so that's related to what we said earlier. It's irrevocable, especially Creative Commons license. You cannot. There are some variations of open licenses that are actually revocable, but a Creative Commons license is not. But you can always, if you're the rights holder, you can do with the original work whatever you want. Like there might always be an open version somewhere around on the internet, but that doesn't mean that you cannot. For example, a concrete example is I have a picture, nice one of a little kitten, and I put it online on Flickr under a non-commercial license. So that means that if you have a poster printing company, you cannot use this image and sell it to, put it on your posters and sell it. But yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me, it is the same situation as in Facebook. One day I want to be open person, public person. Another day I do not want to be so well known, and all is okay.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. So it's with the poster, for example, it does not be good because I don't allow other people to make a poster with a kitty on it. That I cannot make posters with a kitty on it because I'm the rights holder. So I can print posters and with a kitty on it and make money out of it. Somebody else cannot. So like there's just to show you that there are quite a lot of different variations in this. And some examples, some advantages. This entire presentation, by the way, is based on the Open Business Model book by Paul Stacey and Sarah Jones from Creative Commons. I will put the link in there at the end because it's available online. It's very interesting. And what they did is they interviewed 20 open businesses and asked them about the advantages and the reason why they go open. And the openness of the businesses varies. So I have basically made a summary of whatever their arguments are, and I just put them here. But feel free to check it out yourself. So a big argument that a lot of people use is like going open actually increases a lot of visibility. Like, it makes sure that people know that what you are doing. If you're conducting research and your actual article is open, people know what your research is about. If they can only read the title and the abstract, they might not know it. They might cite you less, for example. This is a very common argument. And another argument that is, especially for science, is going open or like depositing the research in a repository or publishing in an open access journal actually creates a very reliable timestamp. So you can always prove that you're the first person. You're the first person who came up with the idea or created the data set. Then something that is a common argument for what I would call what are GLAM, or like galleries and libraries and archives and museums, is that if they have a lot of public domain works and they decide to put the public domain works, to digitize it and put it online, such as, for example, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam or the Metropolitan Museum in New York, I invite you to go to their websites, and you can do all kinds of stuff with it. You can make cell phone covers with materials from the Rijksmuseum, and they love it. You know, they really say, like, you know, we love people being creative with our works. And so, for example, the Metropolitan Museum, they've opened up their work, all their public domain works. They put it online, high quality versions, download for free. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to attribute them because they're public domain. And they have like a huge increase of traffic, on their website, which also means more visibility for the other stuff that they're doing. But also like some unexpected consequences, like, for example, Met images have like an increase of like, I don't know, 500% of views on Wikipedia. So a Wikipedia article that needs an illustration and the Met has something that has something to do with it, they use it. So it's you know, like it can be visibility. This can be a very convincing argument for people to go open. Yeah, boost innovation. This is an example for this is, for example, CERN. I don't know if you know, but like the Large Hadron Collider data, which is the one that they start up now and then they this is the Large Hadron Collider. Yes, that's what it's called, right? The underground system. What CERN does is, for example, because they cannot process all this data by themselves. I mean, they have all those clever people, but they're just like, they don't have enough manpower or women power to do it. So what they do at the moment, they run an experiment. They put all the data online, and they have all people all around the world who just like go start analyzing parts of the data. And for CERN, this has a really big advantage of that they, like, I think the first time they run it, the experiment failed. And then if any physicists are watching, again, I'm sorry, I know I'm just, I'm not giving this very specialized explanation, but I know the first experiment failed. And they knew this so quickly because people all around the world analyzed it, and otherwise it would only last it would have taken them a couple of months to realize that the experiment had failed. Like NASA or the European Space Agency, they do the same thing. Like they cannot analyze every whatever happening in the images that they take with their telescopes. So they use citizen science. They use citizens to actually count stars and planets and things like that. And it's can generate like new ideas and new developments a lot quicker than if they would close it all up. Yeah, you can lose money, but you can also make money with it, which is a bit more difficult to prove. I'll grant you that. But there is a boost for research and development. There's an increase in traffic potentially. Something I haven't mentioned before is that there's a first mover advantage. That means that sometimes if you're the first one to do it, it doesn't really matter if other people copy you. If you're the first one, you can have some sort of like a quality stamp on you. It can also create new forms of revenue, some stuff that you maybe, like for example the Rijksmuseum, I think they never expected that cell phone covers would be a big part of their revenue stream for their Rijksstudio, which is the place where they keep all the public domain images. This is more for open hardware, but this is really cool, and I want to mention it because it comes back in my examples. You have stuff like Open Desk and Open Bike, and where you put a design online for a bike or for a desk, and so I can download it, I can look at it, but I cannot make a bike. But there's a guy in my street who makes bikes, and he uses that, and he has an agreement with the person who puts the original design online, and the person who puts the original design online says like, okay, if you live in Ghent in Belgium, there's this person near you who makes bikes, and there's maybe an agreement between them that, okay, like you get 10% they get 10% of the revenue when the guy in my street sells me the bike he made from the open design. this might sound a bit abstract, like maker communities, hardware fab labs. I'm pretty sure there's a couple of them in Riga as well. I mean, they're like, these places are everywhere, like where people experiment with open hardware and with creating their own tools and creating tools based on open designs. So this has a nice benefit as well as actually not having to import your bike or your desk from, or having it made by IKEA or having it imported from I don't know where, but you can support, I can support a guy in my street who makes the bikes. Yeah, this is a designer argument. And some people say like a fact that people improve and augment my work. It's actually a benefit because I can also showcase like this is what can be done with my own work. For example, the original bike designer, for example, could like put in his in her portfolio could put some like I don't know, like a tricycle or something that has been made with the original design. You can not only make money, you can also save money. Something that was mentioned quite a lot was market research. By simply putting your stuff online, you have market research that conducts themselves, especially in combination if you can use social media a bit savvy. Like you don't need to hire a firm that does the market research. You can just like show them what's online. But of course also production costs and transaction fees can, for you as a company going into the open, if you reuse open materials, it's obvious that those kind of fees, like you do, if you lose open source software, you don't have to pay the license fee to Microsoft every year. And I'm not sure if that's like the biggest saver, but I can imagine that there's quite some instances where you can save quite some money for that. Community benefits. Like quite a lot of the people interviewed in this companies interviewed in this book really said that they wanted to do something for the society and the community, which was quite striking. So they really, most of them got into this because they wanted to give something back, or they wanted to do something for the society, and they felt that going open was actually the best way to achieve this. I'll just give a couple of examples. Like I said, most of them you can reread either in the book or just like I've put in the link there. Anybody knows Blender? There are no graphic designers in the room? This is a very, very popular tool that's used, a 3D design tool that's been used by designers all over the world. So they're actually, everything is openly licensed. There's a community and they accept donations, and somehow they manage to be quite, I'm not saying they run a huge profit, but they are very, at least one of the very most important companies in the world offering this service. And you can use it for free. So we have the Metropolitan Museum, which I mentioned before. So you see an increase in downloads of 64%. So that means that all those people also come to your site and see the advertising for the exhibition you're organizing, for example. One of the most famous examples, of course, is Wikimedia, who only allow openly licensed and public domain content. I mean, nobody's going to say that Wikimedia is quite, like, they're not poor. Like, they manage to have like quite a big revenue from donations and from other services they're offering. So, and that despite that, all of their services and everything they have are also available for free. Do you know the Noun Project? They're really cool. They have, this is a large database of icons and logos. And you can actually use them for free. And then, hold on. You see, this is from the Noun Project, and if you use it for free, you get like a little attribution sentence, and if you pay, you can use it without attribution. So, and they have like some sort of, you can pay per icon you download, or you can have like you can pay like, I don't know, 50 euros a year or something, then you can download as many as you want. It's for free, but it's very obvious that the Noun Project really pays a lot of attention to the copyright owners, because you know, like, it's not because you design a graphic element like an icon that it's not important for you that you're not important anymore as a creator, because so they really pay a lot of attention to that. Oh, this is a funny one. So open. You have really funny communities out there. Sewing patterns are openly available. I don't think they make any money, but you know, like, it's just so you know that it exists. Open source house designs. This is I've been told by the architect that built my house is actually something that real architects actually use a lot. So like it's a tool and a design library for open source house designs. This is a good example of where transaction costs and production costs can be lowered significantly. For example, for an architect who does not need to buy all the programs to know how to design a drain pipe, they can just get the design from this library. Yeah, this is a very famous one. Like, Android is an open source system, so that means that I can build my own Android system if I would like, and quite a lot of companies run a very big profit on using Android. Do you know this one? This is for this is very popular for open source hardware and software. You can build stuff yourself. Like, this is used for like making robots and like fun people who like to tinker with automatic designs and things like that. And they also sell ready-mades, and they manage to make money out of it. OpenDesk, this is what I talked about before. So there's one central platform where the designs are being stored, and then there's a connection with local furniture makers. This is the bike one. You know, like, if I was a bike designer, I would really think this is very fun to see that how a design of mine actually comes into life. Farm hack. I don't think this is online yet. This was something that is related to my previous point about societal benefits. This is a tool library can be very important for regions where, you know, like, farmers traditionally are not very rich. I mean, I don't. So using these open source tools can be actually quite a solution, and can actually reduce their working costs quite significantly. I put this in here, Tesla. I'm not sure what the current status is, but Tesla certainly at one point actually put all their patents online and said that everybody can do whatever they want. Elon Musk says that he wants to speed up innovation for that. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I put it here. It's not the most ideal example of a business, because I know they're not running a profit, but the principle is there at least. How are we on time? Good? Okay. Oh, perfect. This is what I took from the Open Business Model book. Would you mind switching to the PowerPoint? This is something called a business model canvas. Have you heard of it? Have you worked with it before? No. Okay. So basically, what a business model canvas does, it actually helps you to identify the different building blocks of your business or your organization, or even if you want to more abstract of your workflow or what you're doing. Can you switch back quickly to my presentation? Sorry. No, to the presentation. Yeah. Traditionally, this is how this is like structured. So you put everything into relationship with each other. So who are your customers? What are your relationship with them? What are the channels you reach them through? What is the thing that you offer them? What are your resources? What are your activities? What are your Who are your partners? What are your revenue streams? What is your cost structure? And then, this is an adaptation of the original business model. This is the open business model that's been created by Paul Stacey at CC. He added the CC license and what is the social good of what you're doing. I know this is very abstract, but this is a very interesting exercise if you want to evaluate what you're doing and whether you're like right on track with for example, if you want to, your activities need to be in line with your resources and your value proposition. And if you cannot do it yourself, you have to identify the partners and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, now you can switch back. Yeah, thank you. So basically, this was the exercise that I wanted to try to do with you. If you can, I was wondering if you could think about parts of your own workflow or your own work situation, or even if that's too difficult or if it's like not relevant for you at all, like take a company that you know, or like an example that you understand a little bit of how the business works, and identify whether it's possible to replace some parts of it with open alternatives, and if yes, which ones, and how, and if not, why not? What are the challenges you might face? And keep in mind at that point that intellectual property, it works like inside out and outside in. That means that you can whatever you create or whatever service you're offering, you can make that open, but you can also use open stuff from the outside for your own, to facilitate your own workflows. So what could be the positive, negative effects of that on your workflow? In a minute, I will just ask you to think about that for a moment. I'm just going to show something as an example so that you know what I'm talking about. And the example I'm taking is my own business, which is I'm a freelancer. I work for a couple of international organizations, and I do quite a lot of this stuff. Like sometimes for free, sometimes I get paid, sometimes, it differs, but I organize some events, and I do a little bit of everything. And so I made this exercise quite a while ago because I wanted to know whether what I was doing was whether I was still on the right track. And what I did I defined what I do and the different aspect of my business, and then I tried to look like what would be the consequences of going open, and is it even an option? So, for example, if you talk about value propositions, like my value proposition would be that I offer tailor-made trading. I know this is all business speak, but it's just to give you an idea. And this is my key activity, is delivery of training and workshops. And then, like something that I try to do is I try to practice what I preach. And as if I'm talking about open licenses, I try to make sure that in my presentation everything is correctly licensed. If I lecture people about how do you correctly attribute, I try to make sure that everything in my own presentation is correctly attributed. Like a downside of it, like two downsides of it is, one is that my presentation is openly licensed, so it's available for everybody. So, people can say like, okay, we will just look at it online, and we don't need to hire Gwen to give a half-a-day workshop. And also, like I can put this presentation on Twitter, and two people can get very mad because I say something on slide 57 that they absolutely do not agree for, that they think is really ridiculous. And then, like you can get like it's a reputational risk sometimes that you run because they don't see, like they see what's written, they don't see me talk. And what is the main challenge for that is that I need to convince my clients, like that I regularly come up with new stuff, and that I like it's worth it to ask me back once every year to give like an update on this. To go further on the difference, I will display these again after when I'm done. So you have customer segments who are my customers. What are my relationship with them, and what are the channels that I reach them through? So that would be international organizations, research institutes, heritage institutions, and I have a relationship with them because they know me from online, or because they know me personally because I worked with them in a project, or they know me because somebody else told somebody that I do this. So working in the open makes me and my work visible and accessible. That means that everybody who just Googles me comes up quite soon on my Twitter account and my presentation deck. So it's very obvious for people what I do. There might be some embarrassing pictures in between, but in general, it's quite easy to get in touch with me. It's quite easy to find what I do. Again, because everybody can see that I run a risk that people say, this is not for us, which does sound very logical. But if you're ever have put some steps in like the speaker circuit, you have all this kind of public speakers who make a habit of like having this really strange, like having these presentations that have this nice titles, but you really don't know what they're going to speak about, because you can only access the publication if you pay the registration fee, and then you get the PDF. But it's a bit of a risk that you take, and like for me, people see it immediately, like, okay, this is what she does. And again, because they can reuse my materials without asking my permission, they might not hire me. So again, I need to convince people that hiring me is an added value, and I need to do that through the channels that are available to me, which is personal contact and social media. And then you have key partnerships and key resources. So the key resources is like what makes me, what I can do. Like I'm pretty flexible, and I have a good network, and I have quite some experience. I do not know anything about website design and like about coding and things like that. So I need to hire somebody else to make me a website, which is still pending, by the way, because they're slow, and like I need to ask them to finish the website. So that's the vulnerability. It makes me dependent on what other people are doing. And also another issue there is that not everybody I work with necessarily shares my own values. For example, sometimes I'm on I organize an event, and somebody says like, I don't want my presentation to be CC licensed, and then you can say, okay, then you're not going to be able to speak. But sometimes you really want that person to speak, and then you just say, okay, it's fine. Like you can keep it full copyright or things like that. It's sometimes you need to compromise. Am I making any sense? Like, is this something that these examples did they show you what I mean? Maybe we can just. How much time do we still have? We have like 10 minutes, right? 5 minutes. 5 minutes, perfect. So, is there anybody now? I was planning to actually ask you to group up, but I will not do that. Is there anybody like who can think of like something they work at that might need some improvement or might need some experiment with the open workflow and the open workflow department? For those of you working at a library, for example, do you think there's elements of your workflow that could be more open?
I think that my workflows could be more.
Such a. Yeah, use the microphone. Yeah.
I think that my workflows could be more open. I think I have to train how to do it better, practically. And when I will know how to do it, I will do it more open.
Can you give a concrete example?
For example, sometimes I'm not checking for presentations. I use some materials from internet, and I'm not checking these CC licenses, for example. I do give citing, but I do not check what person did rights, what to do, what I can do with that.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good example.
I have an example too. Yes, all the situation when we are using Google Doc, we are in common license. All invited persons are in common license. For example, when we are creating a common project, and all participants can do their marks and work as editors, it's common license too. Yeah or no? I think yes, it's common license. It's,
I'm not
it's
going to
common document,
yeah.
and everyone can use it.
I'm not going to do any
yeah.
like
Of course, there is
theoretical
not a number of
But,
common
yeah.
license, but the idea and
Yeah.
how it works
I get
is the
what you,
same.
I get
Yeah.
what you mean. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
I work with sound and video material, and as you know, it has its own problems. But
Yep.
For me, perhaps more the question is how to apply, or which the license to apply sometimes to, for example, sound recording, especially if it's could be out of copyright, but the author is not known, as you know.
Yeah.
Then it's kind of orphan work, but then it doesn't work, or does
Yeah.
it work? And so
Well, it creates uncertainty.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a
definitely.
problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's. Any other persons in the? Yeah.
If we have an institutional repository, Iskan?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the institution mandates the researchers to deposit their publications in repository, but the publication is in a journal which has a 6-month embargo period. So the researcher can deposit the publication, the preprint of publication. Does it have to be CC licensed?
No. I mean, no.
But it's an open access repository, so people will access it. And there is a publication, the same publication is in the journal for money, and the same publication is there in open access repository without any license.
This is, I mean, this is very, for me, very murky waters, because this is about like licensing different versions of the work, and I'm really not very confident in giving like a final. But it's not the case that for an open access repository, the material needs to be CC licensed.
But that means that anyone can use this material and do whatever he chooses if there is no license. So what's the use of open access repositories?
It's not because something is not CC licensed that there's no copyright on it.
But the copyright is held by the publisher.
Depends. Yeah, sometimes it is. I mean, I think this. You cannot do a blanket. Like you cannot say this is the case for every publication. Depends on the arrangement of that the researcher has with the publishers. And in some institutions, researchers are obliged to hand over the copyright to the institution. And you know, like I'm not sure how that works with.
Okay. Yeah, we have to think about it.
Yeah.
It's just I started thinking about it.
But this I mean, this is actually a very good example of a repository, which is it's not a commercial endeavor, and this is a very big part of your, like a very big element of what you're doing. So it's part of your value proposition that you offer open access to publications as much as possible, and then how you do it, and it's the how should I say, like finding out what is the copyright status and what is the CC status is trying to make your workflow more open.
So we have to think about how to license?
You have to figure it out, how it works.
Okay.
Yeah, that's... I'm sorry, I know I'm not very useful in that, but I think this is something that is really... I know there's quite some research on copyright status of preprints and things like that, but it's not at all my domain of expertise, I'm afraid. So I'm not sure if there's anybody in Latvia who can offer like specialized advice on copyright statuses of preprints. This is, yeah. Are there any other questions? No questions online? No. Okay. Well, in that case, thank you very much for listening to me. I think the presentation, it will be made available, but I might change a little bit more this evening because, like, for example, these pictures, they, you know, like I have to make sure that I have my own credits right, but I did this on the plane, so I have to make sure that I have to add the correct attributions in there. So, but I will do so in the online version, so you'll be able to see it this evening. Okay.
So, as there is no questions, Gwen, thank you for seminar. It was excellent. Thank you all for coming to seminar, and please take yours certificates of attendance there. Sign them, so there, yeah, there on the table. Thank you for coming.